Someone like Bernie Sanders, as I've talked with Noah Culwin over and over again about this issue, okay? Someone like Bernie Sanders is supposed to be a leader, okay? What is this? Someone like Bernie Sanders is supposed to be a leader here. He's supposed to be, as the most popular Jewish politician in the country, he is supposed to be like, he's supposed to be saying like, I'm Jewish. This is a genocide. It's not being committed in my name. It's ridiculous. We have to literally stop all ties with Israel tomorrow. People feel very comfortable taking popular ownership of legal concepts like free speech and due process and murder. But when it comes to the Jewish state announcing and then committing a genocide, all of a sudden it's for the experts only. Here's Bernie Sanders' take that was frustrating to hear once again. Bernie Sanders, talking to CNN, had this to say.
The point yet where you would call what's happening in Gaza a genocide?
You can use whatever word you want.
But Marjorie Taylor Greene is saying that she's the first Republican to go there.
I'm sorry. Yeah. Look, genocide is a legal term. What is going on now, clearly, is absolutely horrific. 60,000 people dead and 140,000 who have been wounded. But the important point is not what you call it. It is horror. And I think the whole world knows that. The answer is, what the hell do we do about it? Should the United States taxpayer, should your taxpayer dollars go to support a government that is doing it? That is the most important issue. So immediately, you got to get ceasefire, you got to get humanitarian aid in, but the United States cannot continue to aid and abet the Netanyahu government doing what it's doing.
Do you want to see United States personnel on the ground helping distribute aid? I mean, what is another?
United States personnel are on the ground helping distribute aid, in air quotes. It's called the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, and they're participating in the slaughter of Palestinian civilians. The only implementation at this point of U.S. military involvement should be to invade Tel Aviv, okay? Should be to forcibly stop Israel. That is the appropriate and just response. It will never happen, obviously, because Israel's actions are directly in line with America's interests in the region. Something that I keep responding to over and over again, something that I keep repeating over and over again. And it would never get to that point regardless, because all it would take is one phone call, okay? It would never get to that point. That's why BDS is the most peaceful solution to stop Israel from behaving this way. The Financial Times, unless the Israeli government agrees to an immediate end to the surge of aid into Gaza, Western countries should be sanctioning Netanyahu and his government. Yeah. And if Israel chooses not to stop, then they should invade. Okay? That's how this works. You either have a pressure campaign, you either have a pressure campaign and you have a boycott, divestments, and sanctions that are implemented against the state of Israel, and that you have Western nations cut ties with Israel, and the fear of those ties being cut for Israel is enough for them to stop doing what they're doing. Or if they continue doing it, then you invade. It's that simple. It is that simple. Okay? We invaded Nazi Germany. If we were actually operating on the same boundaries, if there was any sort of like morality left within the Western civilization that they claim to care about, they would invade Israel militarily and force them to stop. Am I misremembering, or were you hesitant to do BDS initially? No, you're misremembering. I've never been hesitant to do BDS. Bernie did mention stopping arms shipments. Honestly, that's just being realistic. No. What is realistic is not what Bernie says. What is realistic is that mentioning the stoppage of arms shipments, both defensive and offensive, is only a realistic possibility if the likes of Bernie Sanders are actually saying we have to cut all ties to Israel right now. All ties, all economic ties. We have to do a sanctions package that no one has ever seen before. A sanctions package that resembles Russia's sanctions package. That's what Bernie should be saying, so that average politicians that are on the center on this issue, even though there is no both sides of the genocide, should come to terms with that idea. The position that Bernie has had since 2016, or even far before that, which is to cut off weapons transfers to Israel. It would never get to that point anyway, which is why I keep saying all it takes is a phone call. When Israel first launched its offensive, most of the world stood by a nation traumatized by the abhorrent October 7th attack by Hamas, the Palestinian militant group that killed 1,200 people. Okay? 400 military, by the way. 800 civilians. Other nations supported Israel's right to self-defense, to hold the perpetrators to account, and to attempt to secure the release of 250 hostages seized. Hamas should have released all hostages long ago. Hamas tried to release all hostages long ago. Israel denied this opportunity. Hamas should have released all hostages long ago is meaningless because Hamas has tried to release all hostages from the get-go. I think it was October 10th, 2023, when Hamas said, if Israel doesn't invade the Gaza Strip, we will release all hostages, as long as Israel releases all the Palestinian hostages. In any case, Israel's offensive is long gone beyond all bounds of proportionate response. The longer it has continued, the more it has borne the hallmarks of a vengeful assault by Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's far-right government to destroy the very fabric of Palestinian society. This off-ramp that they're giving to Israel is an off-ramp that I said the Democrats should have been using long ago. The idea that this is Netanyahu's war. Maybe, with all of the untold, incalculable human casualties, the death and destruction that befall the Palestinian society in the Gaza Strip, 4 months in, the Democrats should have been talking about an off-ramp, laying the responsibility entirely, squarely on Benjamin Netanyahu's war cabinet. It is far too gone for that. It's gone. It's done. It doesn't work. And I think these guys are still pushing this line because they think it will work. It will not work. Israel is a pariah state. People are repulsed by Israel. People are repulsed by Israeli tourists as a direct consequence of Israel's actions. This is understandable. If you don't want this enmity, you have to be very loud about your distaste. You have to be very loud about your anger and resentment. Okay? I don't care anymore when people say, well, this is racist. You're being anti-Semitic because people are being rude to Israeli tourists. Okay, stop filming yourselves screaming death to Arabs, may your village burn, when you get denied service at a institution that is not in Israel. The do you mean? Nobody cares. Nobody cares about your feelings. If you're defending this, you deserve that enmity. It's that simple. What do you mean? Can you imagine Germans being like, we are being ruthlessly bullied everywhere during the Holocaust, during World War II? Why won't anybody think about the Nazi Party members during World War II? By the way, Germans did say this. Germans literally did say this. Except there was also a far larger percentage of the German population that was imprisoned in the process of resisting against Nazi Germany's violence. 800,000 of them. Okay? 800,000 Germans were arrested and sent to concentration camps for resisting against Nazi Germany. There are not 800,000 Israelis that have resisted against the Israeli fascism. Okay? What the are we doing? At most, there are like 800. Half of them are in this chat every day. Anti-Zionist Jews living in Israel. Anyway, yes, I saw pieces of the Majority Report's interview with the Israeli conscientious objector who literally criticized AOC on the Majority Report and was like, what are you doing with this defensive weapons? Everyone in Israeli society understands that as long as America is committed to the defense of Israel, Israel gets to be as violent as it wants. That lives in Israel, okay? That lives in Tel Aviv. He's the one saying it's this defensive weapons nonsense is. What are we talking about? The pattern is repeated on a lesser scale in the occupied West Bank. Israeli military operations and Jewish settler violence have forced thousands from their homes. A small but increasing number of genocide scholars are concluding that Israeli actions in Gaza amount to genocide. On Monday, B'Tselem, a respected Israeli rights group, reached the same verdict. In a report, it said Israel's policy and its horrific outcomes leads to the unequivocal conclusion that Israel has taken a coordinated action to intentionally destroy Palestinian society in the Gaza Strip. It took them far too long to get to this point, by the way, which is why I kind of understand why people sometimes will get mad at B'Tselem as well. But in any case, Bernie Sanders being like, oh, well, I'm not a legal expert, I don't care about the term genocide, is ridiculous. As Dylan Abba correctly points to, he says, people feel very comfortable taking popular ownership of legal concepts like free speech and due process and murder, but when it comes to the Jewish state announcing and then committing genocide, all of a sudden it's for the experts only. This is genocide denialism. Dylan Saba is Jewish. This is genocide denialism, and it's inarguably rooted in Jewish supremacy. I remember in 2021 when he berated us for using the term apartheid. Sanders is a pattern of racist tone policing, but it's more dangerous here because the horror is not a punishable crime. Genocide is. Someone like Bernie Sanders, as I've talked with Noah Culwin, over and over again about this issue, okay? Someone like Bernie Sanders is supposed to be a leader, okay? What is this? Someone like Bernie Sanders is supposed to be a leader here. He's supposed to be, as the most popular Jewish politician in the country, he is supposed to be like, he's supposed to be saying like, I'm Jewish. This is a genocide. It's not being committed in my name. It's ridiculous. We have to literally stop all ties with Israel tomorrow. You are supposed to be the tip of the spear. That is my expectation, okay? You cannot be a liberal Zionist. Would you agree that Bernie serves the purpose of rehabilitating Israel's image rather than to defend Palestinians? You guys, there's never been a moment, contrary to whatever some dumb on TikTok says, there's never been a moment that I have said Bernie Sanders is like completely on board with the situation, okay? It's just not the case. I have always been critical of Bernie Sanders' liberal Zionism, but I also match Bernie Sanders' statements with the rest of Congress, okay? With the rest of Congress. And on that front, he is unfortunately above and beyond, specifically because of how horrible the rest of Congress is when it comes to the issue of Israel. My expectations of Bernie Sanders, however, is supposed to be that he goes way further than the average politician as someone who has been to Israel, as someone who has been committed to anti-imperialist sentiment throughout his multiple decades-long career, okay? At this stage, you cannot be outflanked by anyone in Congress, especially if you are someone who is an independent, especially if you are someone who has actively communicated a different position, who has never shied away from literally calling into question our allegiance with Israel when you were running for president, okay? The guy that says we need to cut off weapons to Israel cannot turn around and say we need to cut off weapons to Israel right now, okay? That same guy should be saying it's over. Israel is done. We need to invade Israel is what he should be saying. Yeah. Your expectation is that he pushes the Overton window for Israel by speaking boldly as the most popular Jewish congressperson, like you said earlier, who would expand the permission structure greatly. Exactly. I don't think this is an insane expectation from Bernie Sanders either. Optics on this matters. Bernie Sanders being Jewish and socialist matters. Okay? Bernie Sanders being a Jewish socialist here matters quite a bit because Rashida Tlaib can scream bloody murder every single day, but racist Americans are never going to listen to her. As a matter of fact, she's been censured by Congress. Randy Fine, on the other hand, has not been, even though he has directly said genocidal things over and over again in defense of Israel's genocide. Rashida Tlaib was censured for saying, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. I have not forgotten. Okay? Sorry, that is the reality. That's the same reality why so many people still come in here to this day and call me a terrorist. Okay? Hassan versus no being a terrorist. Like, do you see? Do you understand? This is the average American, okay? Well, not the average American. This number is getting smaller and smaller every day. If I were to ask this person, do you like what Israel is doing? He would probably say, nah, Israel sucks, but you shouldn't hand it to the terrorist groups or something because they're cowards, okay? Phantom Hammer Murderer, do you like what Israel is doing? Have you taken Israel's dick out of your mouth? A year ago, these guys would say, F you, Israel's in the right. I hope they crater Gaza. Now, even these guys say, I don't really like what Israel's doing, but you love terrorism. F you. Why is AOC not on the list? She is. The 10 members of Congress calling Israel's genocide in Gaza a genocide. Rashida Tlaib, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Ilhan Omar, Ayanna Pressley, Summer Lee, Al Green, Delia Ramirez, Bonnie Watson-Coleman, John Garamendi, and Marjorie Taylor fucking Greene. I'm surprised Tom Massey is not on there. Yeah, Greg Kazar also not on there. Incredibly disappointing. He's the head of the Progressive Caucus. It's over. AOC cannot figure out which side she's on. No. That's the worst part about this. AOC's positions do not make sense. Do you understand? Because she has called it a genocide long before many members of Congress ever did, with the exception of some on this list. Okay? She's called it a genocide already, which makes her recent statements about defensive weapons to Israel even dumber. If you think that a supposed ally is committing a genocide, you can't advocate to give them defensive weapons. You can't advocate to give them anything. It doesn't make sense. Dude, that Phantom Hammer Murderer only follows you. They're such a loser. They made an account just to harass you. Wait, they haven't responded though. I asked one question and they buckled. Even though they created the sock account exclusively to follow me, we haven't heard from them since, sadly enough. Wonder why. Wonder why they quieted down. Anyway, but yeah, the Bernie position is ridiculous. He should know better. He should be on the forefront of this conversation, especially as things have moved in his direction. Okay? More and more people coming to this recognition of what Israel is doing and what Israel society broadly has defended as permissible has allowed me to also continue speaking out on certain things that I did in the beginning as well, but not to the same degree. Okay. If your goal is to stop this bloodshed, if your goal is to stop this violence, you have to be a leader in this movement. You have to recognize that as discourse moves in your direction, you can continue moving unless you think that's the only thing you want, unless you think that, we just want to stop some weapons going to Israel. Bernie Sanders today, yet again, refused to apply genocide to Gaza, even as Israeli genocide scholars, human rights groups, and courts use that term. Meanwhile, listen to John Mersheimer with Tucker Today, explaining why it's classic genocide and the U.S. should stop funding it.
Are we in Ukraine?
Yeah, I seriously don't understand her calculations sometimes. What does she think she's getting out of these choices? What are deals being made? Whatever they are, they hardly seem worth it. The only thing I've been able to conclude about AOC recent Marjorie Taylor Greene take is that her ego got in the way. She didn't want to hand it to that demon, even if it was the right thing to do. Okay, if you don't want to hand it to that demon, Marjorie Taylor Greene, then you be the person who is pushing for this amendment. Do you understand? That's my expectation. That's what I'm advocating for. I'm saying, why let Tucker Carlson, I talk to people in Gaza, okay, on a daily basis. They have access to the internet. And what they see from the internet is that it's always right-wingers that are speaking out on Palestinian lives. It's never liberals. People literally think liberals don't give a about Palestinian lives. Part of that is because the market is flooded with right-wing propaganda, no matter what. Okay? But there is a truth to this. There is a truth to this. When you have a void, when there is a messaging gap on the issue that everyone recognizes is a genocide, cynical grifters like Tucker Carlson and Marjorie Taylor Greene and even Nicholas Fuentes are going to take advantage of that. They are going to be seen as the prominent figures that speak out on these atrocities. Why the would you ever allow that to happen? It doesn't make sense, especially if you truly do care about the plight of the Palestinians. It's a 92-8 issue, okay? You got the Tucker Carlsons of the planet speaking out on these atrocities when 65% of the Republican Party's base of support still likes what Israel is doing in Gaza, okay? How the did this happen? Part of that is because no matter what happens, okay, right-wingers are always going to be more prominent.